This is going to be your guide to using Iron Valiant in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We have a Pokemon that just looks good. 130 attack, 120 special attack, 116 speed. This is a Mega Pokemon that can Focus Sash, that has an item, that can get a free Life Orb. It seems outrageous, and it kinda is, but kinda isn't. It really seems like it is the most susceptible Pokemon to move slot syndrome. That you bring an all-physical moveset, and then they set up an Iron Defense, and you lose the game. Alright, you bring an all-special moveset, they bring a Blissey, and you lose the game. You try to go mixed, and it cuts your damage and coverage to where, oh, just like a traditional sweeping Pokemon, or an averaged-out balanced tank team runs over your Iron Valiant, and it's not allowed to play the game. I don't know, but like, you look at this, 116 speed. That outspeeds a lot of stuff, and there's not like too many faster things that are super common in the meta, because Generation 9 is weird, and that's what we've been talking about pretty much the entire time, that Pokemon that have a high amount of base speed, they aren't running that. They're just like tank investing, or they're going more into damage, and they're being very successful because everything hovers around the 80 tier because of Golden Go and Glamora and Annihilate, and then like some other Pokemon just not investing speed and cutting down weird. Also, everything else is just like a Dondozo or Garganasalt. So, it's ugly, it's gross, we're in tank fissure meta, and it seems like nothing can break that except for raw anti-tank. And Iron Valiant wants that, but like, what coverage do you give off? That, wait a second, I'm Fairy type, and I could run Stab Fairy, and then it gets kind of crazy, right? But then no, also ignore the Terra type, that just like defaulted, and we'll talk about that later. So this Pokemon really has it all when you look at it, it just doesn't always have it all. There's an Iron Valiant for pretty much every situation, you're just not going to be running it at that time, and it's going to feel like a useless Pokemon. Guaranteed, because that's how this game works. Boost energy, also possible with this, again, just kind of freeing up a Life Orb for someone else on your team, while having a good amount of threat. But unless you land a Stab Close Combat neutrally with the 130 attack with the plus 30% boost, some things could just survive that, especially like the knockoff or the poison jab. So now you're kind of in trouble, and then Focus Sash activates. Our stats, 7490. That's kind of the average. So that's really what we kind of look for. Maybe I should be using Iron Valiant in my damage calculations, even though this is the last Generation 9 moveset until Hisuian Pokemon come out. Oops. But maybe I should be using Iron Valiant. Like, oh, if a physical Pokemon can one-shot Iron Valiant, that means it is hitting the excellent neutral tier that you want to strive for, instead of comparing that into something like the Silvally, which, one, doesn't exist in Generation 9, and two, isn't like a common enough Pokemon. But it is nice to see, like, if you break 90-90 or 95-95, that's just like the neutral hit you need to strive for, and then you're pretty much taking on anything, or you're 2-8 KOing tanks to where they don't get to set up against you, so you want that. So that means like this is the most average, slightly average on, above average on like the 90 tanking Pokemon, but it's still very susceptible. And then 7460 means, yeah, you're getting one shot. So the booster energy becomes a liability, and Focus Sash just means you 1-for-1, unless they have priority. So this outspeeds a lot of Pokemon in a meta where it doesn't really matter too much to outspeed. So it outspeeds a lot of Pokemon. Like, if there's any honest Timmy out there in the battle stadium that's running like 100 speed Pokemon, 115s or something, you know, they really like Gengar, you get to body him. Now, 116 speed is also a really wild kind of power creep to where, oh, it's not just 115, it just gets to be a little faster than those other Pokemon kind of hanging around. Weird that didn't get like the 117 or 118 because of like Salazzle, Hawlucha, and then okay, then it also got power crept before it even got a chance. Roaring Moon comes in, darn. But then like Floatzel never really got too much play anyways. Lycanroc I think is sleeper OP, but since it has priority, it actually beats out your Sash on a trade, so that's not good. Then like Unreleased, another weird Pokemon, but maybe Timmy brings a Gengar or Timmy brings an Iron Moth. But then your coverage into the Iron Moth isn't great. I don't know, again, like this Pokemon, it looks amazing, and then it just kind of falls to the Paradox Pokemon syndrome of just not being good. Turns out a bundle of stats and potentially decent moveset isn't where Pokemon is anymore. Generation 5, yeah, this thing is illegal. It's a fake mon. But not in Generation 9 after all the other wackiness that's come into the game. You go knockoff, Focus Sash procs, Poison Jab, that's a KO. You're faster than everything because bulky meta, and then you get a 1+. And as we've talked about, for the hundreds of other Pokemon covered in this series, I've lost track of how many fully evolved moveset-y Pokemon, what is that? Over 400, like close to 500? Oh god. There's gotta be at least 80 of them that 1+, if not just over 100, if not actually like half of the competitive Pokemon in the game, actually have like a very specific anti kind of moveset to where it can 1+. So that doesn't make Iron Valiant have anything special in comparison except for the 116 speed, which gets outsped. So I mean, like, yeah, if you're trading like that, a Focus Sash Greninja, a Focus Sash Cinderace, a Focus Sash anything, Jolteon trades as effectively as an Iron Valiant, and then has better speed tier, and maybe like finds something else cheeky on top of it. The moveset, like I said, you're not going to have the right one at the right time. Terra fighting close combat seems like overkill, but you're allowed to close combat because of the Focus Sash. I don't know what other Terra type you go into. Poison Jab is here for like fairy coverage or something. Speaking of, like, this is starting to just become a mess of video rambling, but that's all you can do. All you can do about Iron Valiant is ramble all the pieces together until maybe it makes sense. But it has a ton of weaknesses. Fairy, Psychic, Steel, Poison, Flying. Might want to do something about that. Is it worth a dedicated Terra to where, like, you pick up something weird where you go into the Terra Electric and then you have Terra Blast on it? I haven't pulled up Pokemon DB in a while to kind of figure out, like, the most optimized moveset coverage, mostly because, like, Paradox Pokemon kind of weird. Generation 9 meta also really weird. Seems like more futile than anything, but if you want to go for a specific coverage, you can absolutely find it on Iron Valiant because it gets a little bit of everything in both physical and special. So it's mostly just kind of glue. And it's just a slower glue than Greninja was. And I guess since Protean got nerfed, Greninja isn't as insane. So that's kind of a weird thing. Greninja in Generation 6 and 7 was stronger than Iron Valiant is in its native generation just because of the way things were. And then, like, other moveset options, like I said, I think you need the taunt so you can shut down some setup and at least get that 1-for-1 on your side more reliably with the taunt. Terra Blast into whatever typing kind of opens things up. What about special attack? Well, here's where you can just, again, booster energy gives you the ability to kind of choose your moves. So you outspeed Calm Mind. As we talked about on the Roaring Moon, that's an effective +2 with the booster energy. And then you have the coverage, and then Aura Sphere Stab, nice. Moonblast hits everything, nice. Psyshock for Blissey, nice. 120 special attack, not as nice, but does get pretty threatening and still can find those KOs, especially if you go into some kind of Terra type. I don't think Terra Psychic to boost the Psyshock into like Assault Vest and Special Tanks is the play, but you know, you just go like Terra Fairy, cuts down on your weaknesses, goes into that Moonblast, and then things go crazy, and it like gives you that option to set up. Focus Sash again here, maybe that's another option. I don't think the 120 special attack is worth a specs into multi-coverage. Having a dedicated Terra type into a Terra Blast for some kind of coverage is something you can do. Like, Terra Ground would be pretty nasty. This is also a weird Pokemon in what it doesn't have. So, we have Icy Wind, but we don't have Ice Beam, and we also get the Ice Punch. And even though Hidden Power Ice was all the rage, and Ice Beam, Anti-Dragon, 4X, even though Dragonite's kind of common, but it goes like Terra, something else. So, like, a lot of weirdness has happened in the game, but Ice is such a terrible typing that things aren't going Terra Ice into Ice Beam, Terra Blast on everything for a stab better Hidden Power. Pokemon's evolved. We don't Timmy like that anymore. So there's that, and then, yeah, that's kind of it. It is just the most bland, straightforward special attacker. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it also means you can just put yourself into a hole and be in a bad situation. As we've talked about with other Paradox Pokemon or other strategies for Generation 9, that if you have like a 6-slot Pokemon, that's kind of the 5% win rate increase, you know? If the opponent brings the right team, I use it kind of Pokemon. That depending on the opponent's team, if they don't have a counter for this thing, I'm bringing it and I'm going to win the game. Iron Valiant, I don't see a moveset that actually does any of that. Again, this Pokemon's too honest for Generation 9, even though it has these stats, even though it has like some of the other ugly possibilities that can come out of just like a crazy sweeping Pokemon. Other things that it gets access to, Destiny Bond. This is really good for like trading with tanks and kind of putting your opponent in a really bad situation. But now you're move slot syndroming yourself. Do you run Destiny Bond? Do you run Taunt? You can also run Swords Dance. So like Swords Dance, Iron Valiant also gets scary. But do you actually find the opportunity to make that happen? That if you're like Swords Dancing into an Iron Defense Pokemon, it's kind of a scuffed game state anyways, so maybe you're just better off just raw attacking or not getting yourself into that game state to begin with. And then again, now like, why not just taunt that Pokemon instead? Especially with a 116 speed. So Swords Dance to Wall Break doesn't work. Swords Dance to 3-0, anything slower than 116, also doesn't work because Flutter Mane, Iron Bundle, some other faster Pokemon coming into the game, just doesn't find it. But despite all this, Iron Valiant is the 10th most used Pokemon for Battle Stadium singles, and it's a complete mess. So most people are running the close combat. That's because, as we talked about with the attack stat, it's just the strongest thing it has access to, and a 116 speed, 130 attack Pokemon using a 120 base power stab move is just going to be good. But then it has Destiny Bond with the second most usage, so people are trying to cheese. And that's not a good sign for the Pokemon. They're effectively running it as a 116 speed Gengar, and Gengar hasn't been viable in a long time because of the power creep. So it's a Gengar that can kind of one-shot with the close combat, and then it Destiny Bonds out with the Focus Sash, maybe. Also has Shadow Sneak to trade with other Focus Sash Pokemon, but then your coverage cut down to where you just get walled out by things. Moonblast, Spirit Break. As I talked about, like, I'd rather have the coverage than the Stab Fairy because we have close combat. But then that also makes things weird into Ghost-type Pokemon, but Spirit Break can also bring that utility that lets you survive, but why do you care about being a 2-hit KO Pokemon after Spirit Break? Because of Focus Sash. And then 1/3 are running Encore. That is another weird development that has come out of Generation 9, that Encore has always been around, and viable Pokemon have always had access to the Encore, but you never saw it. Now, the usage has skyrocketed because tanking and setup is so common, and Encore is the best anti-tank move in the game. And while I think everyone innately understood this, they didn't realize it until just now. Where, okay, Taunt, they still have an option to, like, use an attacking move that can maybe do something, so the Pokemon isn't completely worthless. Whirlwind or Phasing is going to be last in the priority bracket, so the Pokemon still gets to take an action. And then, like, if you read into a Choice Specs or Choice Scarf trick, or maybe that Pokemon comes in like, the in-game 1v1 scenario and then just presses the right move and then has the choice item not matter and then can still win the game. Encore removes setup. Because Encore forces the usage of the last move, there is zero counterplay involved. That any Pokemon that's trying to tank or set up is completely removed from the game. Because that Pokemon goes for Iron Defense, Iron Valiant gets to switch in, have the outspeed Encore, and now you are permanently locked into that. And because it lasts for multiple turns, then it's allowed to kind of chip away at you. Oh, what's that you're trying to heal? Boom, Encore. It's just better taunt. It's a taunt where you are not allowed to take any action. And then being forced to switch out into a 130 attack, whatever move Iron Valiant wants to throw, does not feel good at all. So yeah, Encore is the new taunt. And it's weird that it's taken this long for competitive Pokemon for that to just kind of become a thing. And then we can see, like, even Aura Sphere usage has dropped off to nothing. So it's like, oh, but Stab, good base power. Doesn't matter. Shutting down tanks, more important. Cheesing a Destiny Bond and putting pressure, more important. Thunderbolt, I guess that's only for Dondozo. But why do that when you can just Encore it? I guess you don't want to Encore a Fissure necessarily, but if Dondozo, like, used Rest or Sleep Talk or something, just keep it in that forever. Boom. Game over. So, it's an anti-tank Pokemon. Other Encore Pokemon are nasty and can, like, set up and stuff as well. That's just the game state. The game state is that's how weird this Pokemon has to be run to succeed, and then it still finds ways to not succeed. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.